That letter was real, written by a real girl, sent to a woman she had never met, because seeing that woman's face on screen, dark and luminous and unashamed, made her put down a bottle of skin lightening cream. Just a face, just a woman choosing to show up as herself. And it saved someone. That is what we are talking about today. That is who we are talking about today, and that is who we are celebrating. Her name is Lupita Amondi Nyong'o, and Africa has never been more beautifully represented on the global stage than through her. Let's go back to where this story begins. Not Hollywood, neither is it in Yale Drama School, not even on the Oscars red carpet, but in Nairobi, Kenya. That is where Lupita Nyong'o grew up. Born in Mexico City on the 1st of March 1983, her parents were Kenyan academics temporarily living abroad and brought back to Kenya before she was even 1 year old. So from her very first memories, she was a Kenyan child, a Luo child. Growing up in a politically active household with a father, Peter Anyang Nyong'o, who would go on to become a senator, a politician, a man shaped by justice and service. She attended St. Mary's School in Nairobi. She studied film and theater at the University of Nairobi, then at Hampshire College in Massachusetts, then at the Yale School of Drama, where she earned her Master of Fine Arts. Every step of that journey was deliberate. She was not stumbled into greatness. She walked towards it, prepared herself for it, and then stepped through the door when it opened. But before Hollywood, before the Oscars, Lupita returned to Kenya and made a documentary called My Genes. It was about albinism in Kenya and discrimination faced by people with that condition. She wrote it, directed it, and produced it herself. Her very first film was not about fame. It was about dignity, about her people, about telling a story that needed to be told. That is who she was before the world ever knew her name. Her full name is Lupita Amondi Nyong'o. Let's take it apart. Lupita, a Spanish diminutive of Guadalupe, was given to her because it is a Luo tradition to name a child after the event or environment of the day they are born. She was born in Mexico City, so her parents, honoring their Luo heritage, even on foreign soil, gave her a name that captured where she arrived in the world. Her middle name, Amondi, is a Luo name meaning born during the fourth day of the week. And Nyong'o, the apostrophe on that name, marks a specific Luo pronunciation. Every part of her name is a cultural act, a deliberate, loving connection to the Luo people of Kenya. Now here's a fun fact. Lupita speaks 4 languages fluently: English, Spanish, Luo, and Swahili. Not as a party trick, as a lived reality. She is a woman of multiple worlds, and she does not let any of those worlds erase the other. When she played Nakia in Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, she incorporated Spanish into the film because the script included Mesoamerican culture, and she understood instinctively that language is how culture breathes. She brought all of herself to that role, just as she brings all of herself everywhere she goes. Now, I need to take you to a specific moment. February 2014, just days before the Academy Award, Lupita Nyong'o stands on the stage at the Essence Black Women in Hollywood Award. She has just won Best Breakthrough Performance, and she could have thanked her agent, she could have thanked her director, she could have smiled and walked off. Instead, she reaches into the most painful part of her childhood and tells the truth.
I got teased and taunted about my night-shaded skin. And my one prayer to God, the miracle worker, was that I would wake up lighter-skinned. The morning would come and I would be so excited about seeing my new skin that I would refuse to look down at myself until I was in front of a mirror because I wanted to see my fair face first. And every day I experienced the same disappointment of being just as dark as I had been the day before.
That is one of the most courageous things ever said on a stage in Hollywood, not because it was dramatic, but because it was true. A dark-skinned Kenyan woman standing at the beginning of global fame, choosing to use that moment not to celebrate herself, to reach back to every girl who had ever looked in the mirror and seen something the world told her was wrong. And then, just days later, she won the Oscar for her very first feature film. The first Kenyan actress in history, the first Mexican actress in history to win an Academy Award. And the girl who once prayed to God to change the color of her skin was now standing in front of the whole world, dark, radiant, unashamed, holding the most coveted prize in cinema. 118 wins from a single Oscar-winning debut. In 12 Years a Slave, her first ever feature film, she played Patsy, an enslaved woman living under brutality and terror, and she did it with the rawness that left audience breathless and critics speechless. Now listen, the first time, every time. In Oscar, first film she ever made in Hollywood. Tony Awards nomination for Broadway. First stage role she took in New York. Emmy nominations for narrating Serengeti. First time she narrated a documentary series. She was named the first Black woman to represent Lacombe as a global face. In 2014, People magazine named her the most beautiful woman in the world. Beyoncé mentioned her in a song. Jay-Z mentioned her in a song. She didn't chase fame. Fame kept finding her because she kept doing the work. And in 2026, she stars in The Odyssey, directed by Christopher Nolan. She plays both Helen of Troy and Clytemnestra, two roles in one of the most anticipated films in the year, made by one of the greatest directors alive. Nolan looked across all of Hollywood and chose the Kenyan girl from Nairobi. And in 2024, she was appointed the president of the international jury at the Berlin Film Festival, one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. She sat at the head of the table that decided which film the world would celebrate. A Kenyan woman at the top of global cinema, not as a guest, as a judge. In 2019, Lupita Nyong'o wrote a children's book. She called it Sulwe. In Luo, her people's language, Sulwe means star. The book tells the story of a 5-year-old Kenyan girl who was the darkest skin in her family and her journey to learning that her skin is not her shame, it is her light. She drew directly from her own childhood, from the prayers to God to wake up lighter, from the teasings, from the pain, and she turned all of that into a story for children. It became a #1 New York Times bestseller. It won the Coretta Scott King's Illustrator Honor and won the NAACP Image Award. And it sits on the bookshelf of dark-skinned little girls across the world, telling them they are already enough. That is Luo culture at work. The tradition of Luo people who followed the Nile River and settled along Lake Victoria, who built their identity on rhythms of water and community and storytelling. That tradition lives in Lupita Nyong'o every time she opens her mouth. Lupita is Wild Aid's global elephant ambassador, advocating against poaching in Africa. She works with Conservation International. She spoke out publicly in support of Kenyan's youth protest against the finance bill in 2024, not as a distant celebrity, but as a Kenyan citizen who was paying attention. There was a girl in Kenya who once prayed to God every single morning to wake up with a lighter skin. And every morning she was disappointed. And she grew up and she went to the university. And she left for America and she studied at Yale. And she came back to Kenya and made a film about people the world had made invisible. And then she went back to Hollywood and she made her debut. And she won the Oscars and stood on the biggest stage in the world, dark, luminous, and unashamed, and told the truth about who she was. And somewhere in a room, on a phone screen, in a country we may never visit, a girl read a letter that Lupita had received. And she put down the skin lightening cream and she chose herself. At Mural Culture, that is why we tell these stories. Because culture, Luo culture, Kenyan culture, African culture, is not a detail in Lupita Nyong'o's story. It is her story. It is the source of every courageous thing she has ever done. If this story has inspired you, share this story with someone who needs to hear this, and we will see you in the next one. Cheers.